1 year ago, I gave up all of my belongings to set up on an unforgettable journey that would change my life forever. Well, that's slightly overdramatic, but yeah, a year has passed already since I decided to go all in on this nomadic way of life. February 16th of 2017 was the date. So a year and a couple of days have passed at this point. And with that milestone, I thought it would be appropriate if I sat down here and shared some of my insights that I have gained whilst doing this, as well as some of the challenges that come with this. Now, of course, this is amazing that this type of stuff is possible these days. It's very, I don't know, it's for somebody that is a freedom lover like I am. This is amazing that this type of stuff is possible. But of course, it comes with its own set of challenges. And mind you, most people, I feel, view challenges and hardships and difficulty as a bad thing. They run away from it. Whereas I think that challenges, one, are inevitable, and two, challenges are crucial to helping us grow and to helping us expand on a personal level. So I think they are something to be embraced. And ultimately, it's like what you're doing is you're choosing which type of challenges you want. Are you gonna have your own challenges that are you've chosen? Or are you gonna have challenges because you hate your life and because you're living somebody else's life? I definitely won't cover everything, of course, but I'll touch on things that were highly relevant for myself. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, so bear with me if I'm kind of scattered and all over the place. But what I intend to do is start with the more practical sides of this and then slowly work my way into the more ephemeral concepts that you might have noticed that I like talking about here on my channel. So, okay, the first thing, very practical side of this is limited number of possessions, limited number of items that you can carry around. As you know, when you travel, the lighter you are, the easier it is to live, to move around, and the more crap you have, the more you have to literally carry around with you constantly. Actually, it was very easy to get used to this very limited set of items, living with the limited set of items. Probably because I was already traveling for long periods before I went fully nomadic. But I would say it took me around 3, 4 to 5 months until I was totally used to living out of that one bag. And I think you might relate to the fact that most of the items that you have at home in your wardrobe or wherever, most of them you don't use. You use just a small percentage most of the time, and then the rest you might use perhaps just a couple of times a year. So that is really not much of a challenge, at least it definitely wasn't for me. Then a big point is, and I clumped a lot of concepts in this, a lot of sub-points you could say, is decreased comfort. Full-time travel might look very glamorous, and I'm sure a lot of people use that to kind of sell you on this image of just the unattainable lifestyle, the dream lifestyle. You're just constantly traveling, you're constantly in a dream, which is, in a sense, it is true, but in many senses it's not comfortable. For me, I don't think that is a bad thing. I will choose adventure over comfort any day, and also just fulfillment over comfort. You can have a comfortable and boring life. Who wants that? So more specifically, what is uncomfortable? Well, one is when you go to a new place, you're just totally in kind of a mild state of shock. You don't know where you're gonna live, you don't know where you're gonna sleep, etc., etc. So that is something that is quite uprooting for the system. You gotta find reliable Wi-Fi. so you can get your work done, you can stay connected to the people you're working with, etc., etc. Then is points like safety that you gotta think about depending on where you're at. Here in Australia, it's not really an issue, but in some places in Asia, it's something you kind of gotta loosely keep in mind. But what I do is I actually accept that something might happen, and that actually frees me up, and I don't worry about it, and therefore I also don't really find myself to experience it. I don't pull it in. And then of course there's also the point of just paperwork and bureaucracy and all that garbage, life-wasting garbage that you gotta do, you know, taking care of visas and stuff like this that you're still gonna have to deal with when you do this. For example, here in Australia, I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to make it on the dates that I wanted to make it down here, just because the visa process took quite a while. They asked for like 7 documents, which I guess is understandable. There's a lot of immigration happening down here. So yeah, these are the couple of points of decreased sense of comfort in your life. You're trading them off for heaps and heaps of fun and adventure. I think the trade is very well worth it. And perhaps something that's kind of related to the last point is when you're constantly changing time zones, it's challenging to get in sync with people that are, for example, for me back in Europe, I'm working with a bunch of people in Europe, in Ukraine, and in the UK, and I'm constantly changing quite often changing my time zones. So it's a bit of a challenge to sometimes stay completely in sync. You gotta find time where you overlap. But again, it's definitely no deal breaker. You can work your way around this. Okay, moving on. One thing that this has forced me to do, this being constantly traveling, is there's a high level of uncertainty, which is also where a lot of the fun factor comes in. You don't know what's gonna happen. Life is always new, it's always fresh. And what comes with this is, you know, sometimes shit is gonna go wrong, if you wanna define it that way. Perhaps it's meant to go that way. Anyway, but what this really forces you to do, and I think this is very powerful, is it forces you to accept the current situation. Sometimes you're gonna forget stuff, sometimes things are not going to go according to plan. And what this forces you to do, at least it did for me, is to just accept it as soon as it happens, and not be focusing on why it happened or like why it shouldn't have happened. You just, as soon as it happens, you accept it. You don't waste energy, and you put your focus towards what you can do. You put your focus towards the solution, and if you can't do anything, you roll with it. You're just chilling in the moment. Next up, one of the upsides that I've felt from being less grounded in a certain location is that you're constantly drawing inspiration from wherever you're at. Interestingly enough, that helps with productivity, and a lot of other people say this as well, that change of environment really helps them with productivity. Like, for example, here I'm in Melbourne. Melbourne is known to be a very artistic and creative city. And you can kind of come here and really draw energy from that, and that kind of bleeds over into other things that you may or may not be doing. Helicopter. Also with this comes, I feel you can kind of reduce your burnout. If you feel you're burning out from work, this continuous, slow but still continuous movement around different locations, around different cultures, different places, it helps to offset that burnout, because you don't need to like, okay, you're working super hard, you're just like so deep in your projects, and then you need, okay, now I need like a month to get away from it all. What this allows you to do is to kind of be constantly kind of taking little breaks, little perhaps you take a few days away, you come back super refreshed. Perhaps you take a bike ride out into the nature, out into the mountains, and that really helps to keep you moving, keep you going, keep your creative juices up, topped up, and good to go. Downside though of this, I feel it's like the yin and the yang. So the darker aspect of this would be that it's sometimes it's actually harder to be productive because you're changing your locations. You need some amount of consistency. You need to be able to access Wi-Fi, like I mentioned, and for me it's important to have a good space to come and to just get my work in, like to be able to focus and to be able to focus consistently without distractions, and also to be able to just get into that deep focus, to get into that zone where you're like getting that deep work done, where you're very productive. I hope this won't ruin my video. This could be like the soundtrack to this video, I hope. Next is a big point, and I feel it's relevant for just about everyone who goes on this nomadic way of life, is the balance between work and life, or perhaps you could use the term harmony between work and life. How do you balance those two out? It's a bit of a challenge to find that balance, and it's different for everyone. And what I've learned is just that there's no specific principles, honestly. And for me, I feel it is just about that. It's about being able to kind of feel out what is the right balance for me. Like when my projects require me to be more focused, I make time for that. And when I feel that I'm able to kind of slightly let go, but not let go as in like let them just die out. I mean let go as in sometimes they are dependent on what other people are doing, and my input isn't required as much. For example, when the back end of our software that we're currently working on, which has actually turned out to be a very complicated, very full and complex application that we're making. So when the back end is being made, my input isn't really that critical. Like my full-time input in that, I use those periods to go explore, to hang out with people, to insert myself in the culture in whichever way I'm able to do that. What I've noticed for myself, and what I've noticed for many other people who are doing this, is that people think that you could just go and be constantly traveling. And I don't think, one, that you would really want that. You would kind of get travel fatigue very quickly. People think that you could basically just every month you're in a different location, boom, boom, boom. And that doesn't really work for most people, definitely not myself. What I do, I feel 2, 3 months, 2, 3, 4 months, maybe as time goes by, you increase the time, maybe half a year. So 2, 3, 4 months to stay in a place to really feel that you can have some kind of structure in your life, to be able to be productive, and then you fit in travel sessions into that. That's what works for me, and that's what works for most people. So I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking of doing this, is that you just stay in locations for longer periods of time, soak up the culture, be able to be productive before you move on again. And I think with everyone it's different. Everyone's kind of work-life balance will be different. Everybody's traditions, principles around this will be slightly different. And I think it's just a matter of going for it and developing this over time. That's what happens when you do your own thing. You get your own insights, you get your own learnings, and you find your own way. As opposed to doing what everyone else is doing, you take on a set of rules. So I think that's kind of a distinction here. So the work-life balance is a very big point, and it's highly likely that it's something you'll come into contact with, a question that will come up for you, something that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. Another big point, and this was big for me, but I feel it may be highly relevant for some and not as much for others. But what it did, this giving up all of my belongings and just being free like I've always wanted to be, it forced me actually to redefine myself, how I see myself, how I look at myself. Because what a lot of people do, I feel most people define themselves by the type of work that they do. This is my career, this is my purpose in the world, and that is how I understand myself. That is my value in the world. And two, a lot of it is also the nationality that they have, the country that they're from. This is my country, this is who I am, these are my values. And when I started doing this, it was time to chuck all of that out, basically, to redefine all of that. Because, like, as for the country aspect, I know I'm not going to be living in Latvia, and when I will be more grounded probably in later years, it's probably going to be somewhere in the south where people like to have fun, where they like to enjoy life. And so now I'm in a period where I'm completely kind of free, completely ungrounded, and I don't feel honestly that strongly identified with any particular nationality or country. And I think we're just societally, we're in a time where people are going to be redefining themselves, redefining how they look at life, how they see themselves, how they live life, what the purpose for their life is. So this was very big for me. I could go into this a lot more deeply, but that's probably a whole nother video in and of itself. Those were probably the biggest points. Then regarding like meeting people and being able to experience the culture, I find the more I'm in the zone, I'm in the flow of life, the flow of things, the more I keep meeting cool people. So yeah, a lot of this I feel is just about being in a perpetual state of balance, being mindful of what needs to be done, of where you need to apply yourself more, or where you need to kind of maintain. It's so hard to put these concepts into words. So where you need to perhaps give yourself a certain amount of structure if you need that, as opposed to some sort of cut and dry framework that you can just apply for everything. I find for me it's just about being in a state of flow and balance and maintaining that. So yeah, those were some of the things that were highly relevant for myself, and some of them probably will be relevant for you if you decide to do this as well, if you want to do this. Hope this was insightful, and I will catch you guys later.